This is a question that I get asked a lot. What is wrong with the next generation of guitar luthiers? Why haven't you featured him, or them, or her, especially her, on your channel yet? Well, I'd like to take the time to answer this question now. Stick with me, and I'll show you something really cool at the end. But first, I'd like to give context to a video that I launched last week, where I showcased the work of a luthier that you might not have heard of before. His name is Luca Bossata. Now, I'd met Luca last year at the graduation ceremony at Newark School of Instrument Making. I'd been very impressed and actually really quite moved at the dedication that these students had shown building their first instruments during the hell that was the pandemic. It was admirable, and I offered at the time to make demo videos for them. Luca so far has been the only one to take me up on that. Now, I don't make this common knowledge, but since I started this channel, I have maintained a reasonably strict policy of not featuring the work of any luthier who has made less than 30 instruments. In fact, this is pretty much the same policy I had in place during my decade as a dealer of luthier-made guitars, and there were a couple of informed exceptions there too. So the reason you haven't seen him or them or her may be that they just haven't completed 30 guitars yet. Now, there are several reasons why this policy exists, but the most important is literally you, my audience. And I know that amongst my subscribers there are many of you that take a serious interest in luthier-made acoustic guitars and own collections of exquisite instruments that reflect this. I mean, some of the guitars out there are just sensational. Thank you very much for sending me pictures. I'm trying not to be too jealous. But that's why you're here, that's why I'm here, and we share this passion. And many of you have made or are about to make an equally serious investment in the instruments that you own, and very often on the basis of something you've seen on my channel, or in some cases something that we may have discussed in person. You can depend on me to continue to show you guitars that I find musical and satisfying and inspiring, instruments that I would personally take on stage or into the studio. That is not going to change. Now, any luthier or guitar company sending me an instrument to feature on this channel understands that their work will inevitably be compared to that of other luthiers that I've featured here, many of whom are acknowledged to be the finest in the world. I'm talking, of course, about legendary contemporary guitar makers such as Irvin Samogi, John Monteleone, Linda Manza, Ken Parker, just some examples. As well, of course, as the beautiful vintage instruments that I've also played on this channel. And I also make it very clear to any luthier who sends me a guitar that if it doesn't meet my standards, I reserve the right not to film it. I have declined and sent back guitars by names that might surprise you. But this goes back to my initial point. There is a high chance that seeing a guitar on this channel might make you want to own it. Now, if I'd had my wits about me in 2009 when I started this channel, I could have called it something achingly clever like Acoustic Ladyland and developed some sort of outlandish internet persona and got myself billions of views and sponsorships and all that sort of thing, and then spiraled off into the self-help manosphere or something equally exciting like that. But quite honestly, it never occurred to me. I've never really had a guiding principle or a mission statement for what I do here other than to try and do justice to the guitars that pass through my hands, make them sound as beautiful as they possibly can, or as I can, and respect the skill and artistry of the people who have made them. Now, if I do have any sort of end game, it is I just want there to be more really great guitars in the world, but life-changingly great. And if you've experienced such an instrument, then you'll know what I'm talking about. I have seen firsthand what a hugely inspiring impact a guitar of this level can have on a player. It has happened to me on many occasions. Now, I never set out to be a tastemaker or a gatekeeper or an influencer or any of these things, but I do feel a responsibility to focus on my true passion and area of, let's face it, very niche expertise, which just happens to be the sort of guitars that have informed my touch and compositional intent and aesthetic sense for years now. I get a lot of comments like this. And believe me, I take this as a real compliment, but as you may have heard me say if we've spoken face to face, it has to be in the guitar in the first place for me to find it. I was particularly entertained by the comments suggesting that the microphone position or string selection might have been at fault for the recording of the voice of Luca Bossata's guitar. I can assure you that's what it sounds like, which is not bad for guitar number 4, and I have every confidence that guitar 5 and 10, etc. will show marked improvement. Luca is at the start of his journey, but he is serious about what he does, and I respect that. Now back to the 30 guitars thing. The reason I chose this number is that if a new builder is making one guitar every couple of months and refining their design, learning how their wood or carbon fibre or steel or whatever it is works within the context of that design, creating a sound and a process as they go, well, I'd say that's plus or minus 6 guitars a year. So 30 guitars should represent about 5 years of experience and a cumulative data set to work with. If you've been doing something for 5 years, you should be pretty good at it, right? 5 years arguably gives any artist time to begin the process of evolving their own identity, their voice, their aesthetic. This is a constant work in progress, of course. It lasts a lifetime. But 5 years should give anyone making guitars by hand time to really understand the guitars that they make. It gives them time to experiment and to learn, to evolve and to become. Everybody wants to be. Nobody wants to become. After 3 years, a luthier can look back at their first instruments and see weak points in the design, the structure, the voice, and that's only right and natural that such things should exist. Nobody, believe me, nobody jumps up out of nowhere in a full suit of armour. They will also have real-world evidence for how their guitars behave at full tension, how they react to the environment they're in, and most importantly of all, the quality of the player's experience. Are these inspiring musical instruments? If not, why not? All of this implies that by year 5, any issues will have been at least identified, and the process of addressing them will have begun. I think that's reasonable, logical, yeah? Now, I would argue that 20, maybe even 10 years ago, it would have been extremely unlikely for a guitar maker to create something as ambitious as Luca Bossata's guitar on their 4th instrument. This is testament to the sharing of a wealth of experience and inspiration. In short, it is hard evidence that we really have experienced a golden age of guitar making in our lifetime. Luca's guitar wasn't perfect, but that was never the intention. He wanted to see what he was capable of, and that's pretty cool. And I enjoyed my time with the instrument. Now, if you read the title of this video and clicked on it in the hopes of watching me stick the boot into a community of hard-working people who have dedicated their lives to creating beauty, many of whom are much loved and respected friends, well, I'm afraid you're shit out of luck. Now, to newer luthiers, I'd like to offer the following. There is something about your work that makes you uncomfortable. Only you know what it is. It is the thing that you have never seen anywhere before. It's the thing that makes you feel vulnerable and exposed because it came from you and not from those that have inspired you. And as such, it's intensely personal. It is the bit that makes you you, and it is precious. You have an opportunity, some might say responsibility, to really lean into that and make it the focus of your work. This is something that I, as a musician, try to do on a half-hourly basis, to be honest. And it is true of the sonics, ergonomics, and aesthetics of your instruments. But in our visually driven world, it is very often the last of these things, the aesthetics, that people encounter first. And that, Alanis Morissette, is irony. In terms of a luthier-made guitar, we have 5 main signifiers, maker's marks, if you like, that help us identify an instrument's creator by sight. These are the body shape, the silhouette of the guitar, the headstock design, the bridge design, the rosette, and the label. There may be other factors such as bevels, cutaways, fan frets, sound ports, and so on that are identifiable to the cognoscenti here, but my main point is this. That cool design you saw on Instagram or YouTube or some forum and recreated without understanding or appreciating or crediting may well have been the result of decades of work by a luthier that came before you. The term luthier-made guitar really means something for those of us to whom language matters. I believe that a luthier is somebody who makes decisions on behalf of a musician, the end goal being a superlative instrument which suits that particular player in a way that nothing else would. In a truly luthier-made instrument, every single decision taken during the creation of that guitar is based on experience, expertise, and skill, and it is made within the context of that particular instrument. If active decision-making informed by years of accrued skill and expertise fused with a nurtured talent is not present during the decision-making process of every aspect of that guitar, then what you have, I would argue, is not a luthier-made guitar, even if it was made by just one person. Those are my own thoughts, but with this in mind, I am throwing the doors open to builders that have made less than 30 guitars for a new series right here on this channel where I will be showcasing developing talent. Luca's guitar represents the first in the series, and I have changed the thumbnail to reflect this. As I said to Luca himself, I would love to compare your 10th guitar with this one, your 15th, and on, and see what has happened in between. And that is just as true of the work of any aspiring builder. So if you are currently making your first or fourth or 15th or 29th guitar and you'd like to hear it in the same context as others I've filmed for this channel, get in touch. Bearing in mind, of course, that I will be sharing my thoughts about your work as openly as I've spoken about that of established leaders in the field, such as Michael Greenfield, Jason Costel, Chris Mirabella, Cassimi guitars, Turnstone guitars, Taran guitars, and so on and so on. More of the greats, in fact. So feel free to get in touch with me over my website. In the meantime, here is a guitar that was made from wood, salvaged from 2010 Jackson Street, Seattle, Washington, which was the childhood home of one James Marshall Hendricks, and we'll be looking at this one together very soon. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay tuned.